Welcome back to WagerTalk.com. We're shifting gears and heading to the NFL. We're going to take a look at Kansas City at Atlanta. Guys, I got to ask the question. If you watched the Sunday night game last week, and Brian, I know you're a guy that tears the box scores apart. When you look at what Kansas City did, don't look at the score. Look at the box score. You got to say, how in the world were they not only even in this game, but how did they win this game?
It's a stat that we went over, I told you on Monday Night Football. Kansas City, first half of that game, they averaged 2.0 yards per play. They had 49 total first half yards, and they led by 6 points at the half. How does that happen?
It usually happens if I have the other side. That's what usually happens. But when you have a game like that, guys, and it's so lopsided in the scores, how do you look at that moving forward to your handicapping this week? Because do you look at it and say, my God, this team was lucky to win? Or do you say they were up against it the whole game, yet they found a way to win? Is that a sign of a good team?
You know what? It's not only been one game, it's the last 5 games. Up at Wager Talk, I did an NFL chart with the rankings for the last 5 weeks. It'll be up by Thursday. And if you look at Kansas City over their last 5 games, they're 4-1 straight up. Yet, if you look at their yards, they're number 26 in offense and 29 in defense. And yet they're 4-1. So it hasn't been just one game. It's been the turnovers, the not making turnovers and forcing turnovers in special teams, and they've been the benefactor of it. I think clearly when you find a spot to play against them, it helps you, and I think this is one of those spots.
Now, Brian, let's talk about Kansas City one step further. That's Andy Reid's MO all the time. He wants a team that's not going to turn the football over. They're not going to make those dumb mistakes. They will move the football methodically. They don't stretch the field, and they want to be in the game in the fourth quarter, and then they find a way to win it. And he's got the perfect quarterback for that because Alex Smith, high percentage passer, but he's never got gaudy stats to go with it. He's got the completions, but they're of the dink and dunk variety, but it's almost like an extended running game with the way they do the passing game.
It's interesting because you're always going to find outliers in any kind of stats. We've had problems at least I've had problems handicapping the Raiders this year, because they're doing more on the field than their stats say they're doing. And you talked about the way Kansas City approaches these games. I got some stats in here. Kansas City on the season, and the explosive plays I think are very important. Atlanta's plus 18 explosive plays on the season. Kansas City's down 11. That 29 is huge. You just go by that number, and you think Atlanta's a 10-point favorite here. Then you look at turnovers. Kansas City's plus 14 turnovers on the season, and Atlanta's plus 3. So you would think, normally we were taught that turnovers pretty much are random. Obviously, interceptions have some meaning to them. Fumbles, for the most part, are random. But you see a team that's taking advantage of the turnovers, and they don't have the ability to make that explosive play. They give up more explosive plays than they get. It's usually not a team that you want. You think that team is going to regress. But sometimes they don't regress. It's like in college football, BYU this year. They were such a standout from the norm that my numbers kept saying every week, you got to play against BYU, but BYU had a really good season.
They did. Now, Ralph, when you look at Kansas City and you talked about, their defense and stuff, they're deceptively good. They give up yardage, but it doesn't translate into points. And this is a team that the defense, there's only 2 teams in the NFL in this stat that are better, and it's New England and Seattle, and those are 2 pretty good ball teams, obviously. But they're only allowing 1 point per 19.6 yards. A lot of people like to look at the yards, per point. And that same stat, Atlanta ranks 26th out of 32 teams. And as far as points allowed, there are only 3 teams that allow more points than the Atlanta Falcons. And that's the Saints, the Browns, and the 49ers.
Well, you have to keep in mind how the games are going to be played. When you're going to play the Saints, you're going to play Atlanta, they're going to be high-scoring games. So you have to keep up with that. When you play a Kansas City, you play a Cincinnati, one of those teams that have good defenses and the offense isn't as good, it's more of a take care of the ball type of mentality. So even though I agree with your stats and it's something to take a look at, just keep in mind the way teams approach these type of games.
All right, let's put it to you.
Marco, you talk about sandwiches on your radio show a lot.
He also
KC
talks about sports betting once in a while, too.
does he? Well, not at least. Never mind. We talk about a sandwich spot. KC off Denver. They've lost 7 straight games after playing Denver. The only thing that could be worse than that is if they had the division leader on deck next week. Oh, yeah, they do. They have Oakland on deck.
Yeah.
Denver,
And
Oakland
it's a
sandwich.
Thursday night game.
Second straight away. Atlanta home for a second straight game. I like the Falcons.
All right, we got 1 vote for the
I
Falcons.
like the Falcons, too. I think the number's a little cheap here.
All right, I just can't buy into Atlanta, but the spot is totally for Atlanta. Let's not forget, though, Atlanta did have 2 weeks to prepare for Arizona last week, and this Arizona football team, there's some bigger problems on that team because they're not playing good football at all. I'm going to go on the fence with this one. And, guys, speaking about the Raiders, they are the talk of the NFL next to the Cowboys, the big surprise. We're going to make them the coupon code this week. Raiders and the number 10 will save you $10 on any package this weekend at Wager Talk. You can use that on the Weekend All Access. Get that Weekend All Access, $69. Use the coupon code Raiders10. It'll only cost you $59. Check it out, wagertalk.com. We'll be back with a best bet from Ralph and Brian.